Welcome to the deep dive. We take the sources you're curious about, and we really try and pull out the ideas that spark understanding. Today, we're venturing into Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. This is a book you flagged, and it's clearly struck a chord with, well, a lot of people.
It really has, yeah. What's kind of amazing is just how far it's reached. I mean, you see it popping up in all sorts of places: hospitals, prisons, universities, art studios.
Wow.
It's pretty diverse. And the fact that it works across those contexts, and it's in, nearly 20 languages, plus endorsements from the New York Times, Juilliard, it suggests it's hitting on something, pretty universal about creativity.
Absolutely. And it's not just the official places, right? The excerpts mention these organic artists' way clusters just appearing everywhere. Church basements, healing centers, even a hut in Central America, apparently.
Right. It sounds like a real grassroots thing, like an informal support group for creative types.
Yeah, exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to really get under the skin of the artist's way, understand its main principles, and maybe see how they could help unlock that creative spark in you.
Sounds good.
Okay, so where do we start? What's the first thing that jumps out?
Well, one thing that's quite compelling right at the beginning is the time commitment it asks for.
Yeah.
It seems surprisingly manageable for what it promises.
How much time are we talking?
The book suggests something like 7 to 10 hours a week, maybe just an hour or so a day, over 12 weeks.
Okay.
And the excerpts really emphasize that this, relatively small investment could actually lead to pretty big shifts, maybe even change your whole direction long term.
That does sound less intimidating than you might expect. But the material also talks about this idea of spiral path. That suggests it's not exactly straightforward.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a really key way to think about it, right? The spiral path. It acknowledges that getting into your creativity is not like a straight line from A to B. You might revisit certain things, certain challenges,
Right.
but each time you're seeing it from a different angle, maybe understanding it a bit more deeply. It's less about, getting to some finish line and more about just finding the trail, getting your footing, and starting that climb. An artistic life, it suggests, is kind of a continuous journey with frustrations and rewards along the way.
So it's ongoing, not just a 12-week fix and you're done.
Pretty much. It's about the process.
Oh, okay. Now, another concept that came up was creativity recovery, and it was described as a withdrawal process. The excerpts made a point of saying it's not giving something up, but withdrawing to yourself. Can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah, the distinction is really important, this withdrawal. It isn't about, say, quitting coffee or something external. It's more like a conscious pulling inward, pulling back your creative energy, which might be kind of scattered or, focused on things that aren't really feeding you. Think of it like pulling focus on a camera.
Ah, okay.
You pull back from all the immediate, maybe overwhelming details for a second. That gives you a bigger picture, a better overview. And then you can make clearer, more, authentic creative choices.
Right.
And the excerpt suggests this can be, emotionally rich, maybe a bit bumpy sometimes, like walking through different kinds of terrain as you head towards higher ground, creatively speaking.
That camera focus analogy is helpful. And does this connect somehow to Robert Bly's idea, something about a descent into ashes?
Yeah, I think it does. Looking at the bigger picture, that descent into ashes, it speaks to this necessary stage, like mourning the parts of yourself, maybe artistic dreams that you kind of shelved or ignored. It's about facing that loss, acknowledging it as part of digging up those buried dreams. And that rediscovery process, it can be pretty potent. You might get these sudden bursts of energy, maybe some grief too.
Yeah.
As you reconnect with those parts of yourself.
Sounds quite deep. Transformative, but maybe challenging too.
Definitely.
Okay, another big idea, the censor. I think pretty much anyone who's tried to make anything knows that voice.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the censor. That's basically, that internal voice, that mechanism that just stops you, blocks those creative impulses.
The doubt monster.
Exactly. And it often comes from stuff we picked up, right?
Yeah.
Childhood messages, society's pressures, those little whispers saying, you're not good enough, or that's silly.
Right.
A key thing the excerpt stress is not trying to argue with the censor, like logically. It's more about recognizing it for what it is, just a block, not the voice of reason.
So how do you deal with it then?
Well, one of the main tools for spotting it and kind of gently disarming it is this practice of morning pages. And interestingly, this lines up with some psychological ideas, like in CBT, about identifying negative self-talk.
Ah, yeah.
Recognizing that critical voice isn't objective truth, it's just learned patterns. And writing them down, like in morning pages, helps you see them and challenge them.
Morning pages.
Okay.
So we definitely need to dig into that. But before the how-to, the excerpts mentioned something interesting. They said, while the artist's way might lead to, measurable things like brain changes or less stress, the main experience is something else.
Yes, that's a really crucial distinction. Those tangible things are interesting, sure, but the core experience, according to the material we have, is more about a feeling of like wholeness, rightness, inner power.
Wholeness.
Yeah. And this seems to tie into meditation as a way to kind of find your own identity and connect with an inner power source that helps you make changes. There's this fascinating link suggested between the power to change and the light of insight, that aha moment.
Yep. And the morning pages help forge that link.
Precisely. They're described almost like a spiritual ham radio set.
Oh, okay.
For getting in touch with the creator within, as Cameron puts it. So it's not just clearing out mental clutter. It's seen as a path to a stronger sense of self, your own creativity, accessing that inner space where your art connects to, something bigger.
Okay, so much more than just journaling. Let's get practical then. Morning pages and artist dates. We know morning pages help quiet the sensor and connect inward. What exactly are they?
They're deceptively simple, really, but powerful.
Yeah.
It's just 3 pages. Stream of consciousness writing. First thing in the morning.
First thing, like before coffee.
Ideally, yeah. Before you really get into the day, before that inner editor, the sensor, is fully awake. The main thing is just to keep the pen moving. Don't judge it, don't edit. Whatever pops into your head, worries, lists, random thoughts, dreams.
Just get it down.
Get it down. The excerpts say it helps move those fears, that boredom, which they say is often just fear in disguise, even despair. Just move it out of your head and onto the page.
Okay, 3 pages, unfiltered, first thing. Got it. And the other main tool is the artist date. That sounds potentially fun.
It absolutely should be fun. The artist date is basically a planned solo adventure.
The solo.
Yep, just you. Something you do purely for yourself to kind of feed your creative spirit, replenish your inner resources. Fill the well is the phrase used.
Fill the well.
Exactly. The excerpts admit some people might be skeptical at first, like, what's the point of this non-productive thing? But they really stress how effective it is.
So literally taking yourself on a date.
Pretty much. The idea is it's specifically for nurturing your younger self. That imaginative, curious artist child inside.
Yeah.
That part of you respond to wonder, beauty, fun sensations. So the artist date is like taking that inner kid out to play, letting them engage with the world in a way that sparks joy and curiosity. And that engagement, that's seen as key to reaching your deeper creative self.
So it's actively seeking out delight and inspiration for that inner kid, not just, say, binge watching something.
Right. And that connects to the idea of filling the well through focused attention. The excerpts contrast this with using distractions, maybe compulsive reading, doom scrolling, whatever, as a way to kind of screen out awareness. The point is to really experience your life. Notice the details, the light, the sounds, the textures, because that sensory stuff, that's the raw material that feeds your creative well.
That makes a lot of sense. Be present. Observe. Okay. Now, the excerpts mention an initial contract for this 12-week thing. What does that involve?
Right, the contract. It's basically setting an intention, a conscious commitment to this 12-week deep dive into your creativity. It usually means reading the relevant part of the book each week, doing the morning pages every day, scheduling and actually doing that weekly artist date, and then completing whatever specific exercises or tasks are suggested for that week.
So it provides structure.
Exactly. A framework for what can feel like a pretty ambiguous process sometimes.
In week 1, it says, focuses on recovering a sense of safety. Why start there? Why is safety the first step?
Well, the thinking is that safety is fundamental. You can't really explore your creativity freely if you're constantly hampered by fear or self-criticism.
Makes sense.
A lot of people who feel blocked creatively have had experiences, maybe early on, where their efforts were criticized, ignored, or actively discouraged. So creating a safe inner space first is crucial. It's about giving yourself permission to even try things without that immediate judgment, internal or external.
Which leads right into this idea of shadow artists.
Right.
That term really jumped out at me.
It's a powerful concept, isn't it? Shadow artists. They're described as people who, often because they didn't get that crucial early encouragement, never really let themselves pursue their artistic side fully. So they might channel that energy elsewhere. Maybe they get really involved in the arts. But as critics, or collectors, not creators. Or they just live with that nagging feeling of what if, that sense of unfulfilled potential.
Yeah.
The example given of Edwin, the wealthy art selector who's pushed into finance instead of art, that really hits home. He has success, but not creative fulfillment.
I can imagine that's quite common. And the excerpts mention those parental lines, stop daydreaming, be realistic, and that whole starving artist myth that pushes art into the hobby category.
Exactly. Those messages, subtle or not, guide people towards practical paths. Art becomes something for spare time, maybe, if at all. That lack of validation early on, combined with the starving artist idea, can really shape someone's creative identity and whether they feel allowed to claim it.
So a big part of recovering safety must be challenging those old beliefs. And also that limiting either or thinking that seems to plague blocked creatives.
Precisely. The excerpts tackle that head on. They point out how many people operate under these hidden assumptions. I can be an artist or happy in love. I can be an artist or financially secure.
Right, like you have to choose.
Yeah. And the book strongly argues these are false choices. It insists you can integrate them. You can be a thriving artist and have a rich personal life. You can be creative and financially stable.
That's a really important message, and it feels connected to the need for self-nurturance, for protecting that inner artist child.
Absolutely linked.
Yeah.
The excerpts frame self-nurturance not as indulgence, but as essential, a necessity for fostering creativity and strengthening that connection to your creative source. Just like you'd protect a kid learning something new, you need to protect your artist child. Allow those first steps, those maybe awkward early attempts, without harsh judgment. It's about creating a supportive inner space where it's okay to experiment, even to fail, because that's just part of learning.
The excerpts also brought up crazy makers and setting boundaries. That feels very practical.
It really is. Crazy makers. They're described as people who kind of discount your reality or constantly push your boundaries, often with small things maybe, but things that derail your focus or drain your energy.
Energy vampires.
Basically, yeah. The suggestion is to look at those relationships. When you feel driven crazy by someone, are you maybe using that as an excuse to block your own creative work? It's about learning to spot those drains and protect your time and your creative space. Both are vital.
Which ties back to those internal barriers too, right? Like deep skepticism about creativity itself, or maybe about a higher power concept.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That kind of deep-seated skepticism is acknowledged as a major internal block. And the advice is to air those doubts, bring them out, rather than stuffing them down. Interestingly, it also mentions this underlying fear some people have. A fear that if they actually do the self-nurturing things, it might work. That the universe might actually respond and open doors. And that potential, that unknown, can itself be scary enough to keep you stuck.
Wow, a fear of things actually getting better. That's something.
It is, isn't it?
Now, shifting tone a bit, there's that lovely bit of wisdom from the author's grandmother about the quality of life being tied to our capacity for delight. And that comes from paying attention.
Oh, that's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
The grandmother's flora and fauna reports, it just shows the richness you can find in everyday details if you look.
Yeah.
And those anecdotes may start in finding comfort in a chrysanthemum after a tough time, or the memory of the snowy moon when the author's mother died. They really highlight how powerful just noticing beauty can be even when things are hard.
A reminder to stay present. Find the wonder in small moments. Okay, moving to week 2. Themes here are recovering a sense of identity, and specifically anger and synchronicity. Anger as fuel. That's not how we usually think of it.
No, it's definitely a perspective shift. Yeah. Anger isn't presented as something bad to be squashed. It's framed as valuable information, a signal. Maybe your boundaries were crossed, or maybe it's showing you a direction you want to go.
Like a compass.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
So someone in creative recovery, feeling anger can actually be a sign of returning health. The idea is to listen to it, figure out its message, not just shut it down.
Interesting. And the other big theme for week 2, synchronicity. Those lucky breaks, coincidences.
Exactly. Synchronicity is described as something that happens maybe surprisingly reliably when you start moving towards your real dreams, when you commit to what your soul is calling for. The excerpts give examples of help or opportunities showing up seemingly out of the blue. It also touches on this idea that maybe we're more comfortable feeling ignored by the universe than watched over.
Right.
But the suggestion is, the universe often does support people who follow their heart. And sometimes the fear of actually succeeding is a bigger block than the fear of failing.
That's a recurring theme, the fear of success.
Okay.
The excerpts also talk about handling criticism and the importance of self-kindness.
Yeah, crucial skills. Learning to tell the difference between useful criticism, which can actually feel like a relief sometimes, clarifying things, and criticism that's just, unhelpful noise from others. And alongside that, the active practice of self-kindness. Concrete things, feeding yourself well, making your space comfortable, getting rid of old stuff that drags you down. Small acts, big impact.
Creating a supportive environment inside Anne, and this leads to honest changes and the resistance that comes up.
Right. Working with the morning pages apparently helps you get past the I'm fine surface stuff to how you really feel. Self-expression needs a self to express, right? And the pages help uncover that. But finding your real self often means letting go of old ideas, illusions about yourself. That leads to change, real change. And even good change can trigger resistance, that pullback to what's familiar, even if it wasn't working.
Which brings us to buried dreams and reading deprivation. Reading deprivation sounds odd for creative types.
It does seem counterintuitive.
No.
But creativity, the excerpts argue, is grounded in reality, in specifics, in paying close attention to the world. The buried dreams exercise listing fun hobbies quickly is meant to bypass the censor and tap into those forgotten joys.
Okay.
And reading deprivation, it's presented as a kind of jumpstart for when you're stuck. The theory is that constantly taking in words can act like a mental sedative, kind of clogging your own creative channels. So taking a break from reading forces you back into your own head, your own senses, the world around you. It can shake things up, rearrange assumptions, and let your own ideas surface. Fill the well from the inside, basically.
Prioritizing direct experience again. Okay. Trusting your intuition and getting over the fear of doing bad work is another big one.
Oh, yeah. Huge emphasis on trusting that inner guidance and just following it without constantly second-guessing or fearing judgment. It tackles that common block where we think we have to be brilliant right out of the gate.
Right, the perfectionism trap.
Exactly. We demand instant success from ourselves and maybe recognition from others, and that stops us even trying new things. The focus, it says, needs to be on the process, on the doing, not just the final product. Allowing yourself to do it badly first is key to eventually doing it well.
That really takes the pressure off. And then there's jealousy, that tricky emotion.
Tricky but useful, according to the excerpts. Jealousy is reframed as a signpost. It shows you what you want, but fear you can't have. It's called a stingy emotion because it doesn't see the abundance out there.
So what do you do with it?
The antidote suggested is making a jealousy map. Literally write down who you're jealous of and why. Get specific. Seeing it on paper helps you confront it. And then the idea is to take that fierce energy and redirect it. Use it as fuel for your own creative goals. Turn envy into action.
A jealousy map. That's surprisingly practical. Okay, jumping ahead now to week 10. Recovering a sense of self-protection. This covers a lot. Dangers, workaholism, fame, acceptance, exercise, even building an artist's altar.
Yeah, it's a packed week. The core idea seems to be that creativity is this powerful energy, like God energy flowing through us. Resisting that flow can feel scary, out of control. And paradoxically, people often throw up blocks right when they sense real potential emerging.
Interesting.
So blocking becomes an issue of faith, really, choosing fear over trust in your own creativity. And for some, the book suggests happiness itself feels terrifying.
And workaholism fits in here as a block, even though society often rewards it.
Definitely. It's called an addiction. It just keeps you too busy for the essential stuff, the pages, the dates. It becomes a way to avoid yourself, your deeper creative needs.
And fame, that's seen as potentially dangerous.
Yeah, a spiritual drug, a byproduct that can become the focus. It leads to that how am I doing syndrome, constantly looking outside for validation instead of focusing on the work itself.
Which links to self-acceptance, I guess.
Absolutely. Accepting yourself as an artist. Recognizing your own rhythm might be different. Maybe you have ups and downs, maybe an erratic cash flow sometimes. The key is separating your self-worth from the market value of your work.
That's vital. And exercise gets a mention too.
As a necessary physical action. Creativity isn't just mental or spiritual. The body's involved. Exercise provides perspective, releases energy, combats the potential funk of being too much in your head.
Good point. And finally, for week 10, the artist's altar.
Yeah, this symbolic act. Creating a dedicated space, even just a corner. Filling it with things that feel meaningful, sensory. It's a physical way to center yourself, honor your role as a creator, acknowledge that connection. And it underlines that spirituality and sensuality aren't separate for artists. They can feed each other.
Okay, into the home stretch. Week 12. Recovering a sense of abundance. Trust comes up again here.
Big time. Creativity at this point requires real receptivity, deep trust in the process, which hopefully has grown over the weeks. It circles back to the idea that your truest dreams are aligned with something bigger, and the universe supports you when you move towards them. It also flags those creative U-turns moments where you might suddenly feel indifferent or like it's all pointless or you're not good enough. It urges you to just notice that resistance, see it as a sign you're close to something important, and keep going.
Don't let the U-turn win. And choosing an artist totem.
Yeah, another symbolic thing.
Yeah.
A small object that represents your inner artist child. Something to remind you to protect and encourage that playful, imaginative part of yourself.
And even the tough times, the dark nights of the soul, get a different spin.
Right. They can also be noches estrelladas, star-studded nights.
Yeah.
Meaning even in the darkness or doubt, there can be beauty, insight, stars to see. It also mentions the value of forming clusters, those support groups, to share the journey and combat the toxic artist myths out there. And it finishes with this lovely wish for you to find fellow travelers, fellow lights, and to be generous in supporting each other's creativity.
Wow. It really does sound like the artist's way offers a very thorough and personal path for getting back in touch with your creativity. So just to quickly recap some key takeaways from this deep dive, it seems like consistent effort with those tools, morning pages, artist dates, is crucial.
Definitely.
And it's about navigating that initial withdrawal, learning to manage the inner censor, tackling those limiting beliefs, really focusing on self-nurturance and building trust in the whole process.
Exactly. It's holistic. It addresses the practical stuff, but also those really important inner shifts in how you think and what you believe is possible.
So maybe a final thought for you to take away this week. Think about just one small luxury or act of real self-kindness you could do. Something just for your artist child. Maybe it's finally buying that paint color you love, or taking a walk somewhere beautiful without your phone, or just giving yourself an hour of totally guilt-free time to doodle or daydream or whatever feels nourishing.
That's a lovely invitation. And seriously, if any of this resonated with you, we'd really encourage you to check out Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way for yourself. It clearly holds a lot of practical tools and deep wisdom for anyone looking to spark or deepen their own creativity.